Yay!
Yay!
What is up, everybody? Obviously, that yay was different than probably most yays. We are in the midst of interesting times. But a part of all of this, and we'll talk about this in the main show. I just wanted to preface everything tonight by saying we are appreciative and we thank all of you for all of your support, both now and continued, and for tuning in tonight. Tonight's episode, we're going to have a guest, Danielle Snyder, on the show, who deals with a lot of athletes and mental health or wellness. And we're going to be talking a lot about how maybe we can use some tools to help combat the anxiety that many of us are feeling right now in this current climate. So we felt it was a relevant show to do right now. And we hope that some of you can pull something from it, and maybe it will help a lot of people. It's definitely going to help me, and I'm sure Kim. Danielle is fantastic. We just got a chance to meet her in the pre-show, so we're very excited to have her on the show tonight. We are at episode 299. We are one episode away from 300. It's going to be weird to celebrate.
We were hoping episode 300 would be like a big deal, maybe a gathering, yada, yada, yada. Obviously, things have changed.
But we're going to talk a little bit about that on the show. We don't want to, of course, make the whole show dire and sad. The whole point of the channel has been to entertain, to educate, and to inform. So tonight's episode is going to do just that. We thank all of you for your time. Sit back, relax. Ginger Runner Live, episode number 299 begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everybody? Thank you for...
Today was your hands day. That's been my big move.
I mean, we've had this tradition of starting every episode off with like a positive yay to invigorate ourselves, get ourselves into the mindset of doing the show.
And also let our guests know that we don't really take ourselves that seriously.
100%. The show is always very lighthearted and entertaining. Obviously, we're at episode number 299. We want to be able to celebrate this milestone. It's pretty great. We're 1 week away from 300. But there's certainly a lot more going on in the world that requires our attention. And we felt the need to do a show tonight. The last 4 days alone have been really crazy. We'll tell you a little bit about that in tonight's episode. But we first wanted to just start again by thanking you for joining us tonight, taking time out of, I know you are probably having a very busy Monday, whether it's juggling family or work or trying to figure out what's going on in the world. But we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules to spend a little bit of it with us. Tonight we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Danielle Snyder. She is a wellness coach. She deals with social work. She's a licensed social worker that will hopefully provide some tools for all of us tonight to help combat this ongoing sense of anxiety that we're all feeling. As someone who suffers from anxiety and have my entire life, I've been looking forward to an episode like this to talk to someone who maybe has the tools and advice for those of us who are dealing with this. Maybe you have never had anxiety, and maybe this is something you're dealing with now unexpectedly.
Or maybe you're like me and your OCD has been tucked away neatly for a number of years, and now all of a sudden it's presenting itself again.
So our guest tonight, Danielle Snyder, is going to help us. And this is one of those episodes that we feel is timely, is relevant, but also important. So before we introduce her, of course, we have some individuals we like to thank at the top of the show. And I want to make sure that I really emphasize this. It is our Patreon supporters. You can go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner and you can join us there. But the Patreon supporters right now are helping us do this full time. We don't have day jobs. This is what we do. We provide live shows every single week, videos, reviews, films. We do it all. And it is because of our Patreon supporters that we are able to do this. We know that this is a crazy time and things are going to continue to get crazy, and it's going to put pressure on families and individuals. So we have to thank our Patreon at the top of the show because they are the reason that we're able to do this. And we hope that we can continue to provide entertaining content for you throughout all of this. That is our goal. In addition, the top two members at the top there of the Patreon levels. We like to thank them at the top of every show as well. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong, fantastic human, has an organization called Trailblazer. They showcase the trails in the Hong Kong region. And once this is all passed, hopefully you get a chance to go visit Hong Kong and enjoy those incredible, beautiful trails. Chris is just, again, a wonderful human with a great organization. Brian Sands has been a longtime supporter and is one of those inspiring dudes that we all learn from on a regular basis. He has lost over 100 pounds in his journey, ran his first marathon, first 50K. He's training hard for big races that hopefully will eventually happen later this year. But Brian and Chris, we appreciate you two very much, and all of our Patreon crew. So moving into tonight's show, again, we just want to remind you that we are here and we're going to be doing live shows on Mondays and continue to crank out the content. I posted a video last Friday sort of explaining where my mind was. I didn't feel it was appropriate to just post a review as though nothing had happened in the world, because a lot was happening in the world. But I did post a video sort of giving you my insight into the things that I've been focusing on a lot lately, which is being mindful, being kind, and being creative. You can go check out that video. And I want to talk to Danielle more about that on tonight's episode. So sit back. Let's enjoy this. Our guest is a wellness coach. She works with athletes. She's an ultra runner herself. She has the current FKT of the PCT through Oregon. Like, she's badass. Legit. In addition to being a licensed social worker, and she deals with athletes and working with mental health and wellness on a regular basis. So this is one of those episodes where if you've got questions, Kim, you're going to be in the chat room.
Yeah, first I want to say welcome to everyone who is able to join us today that usually cannot join us. There's a lot of working from home folks that are in the chat room that we don't normally get to see. So welcome. If this is your first time catching us live, we do have Danielle here. So if you have questions, please ask them in the chat room. We also have our wonderful coach, Coach David Roach, in the chat room as well, firing off some good questions in there. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Love having Coach Roach in there. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, and I want to just get right into it. She's coming to us all the way, I believe, from Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, Danielle Snyder.
Yay!
First,
hi.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing?
As good as we can, I guess, under the circumstances. Of course. What?
Oh, I was going to say, we're on and off.
We're on and off.
Yeah.
2 hours ago, off. Now we're on.
It's interesting, my go-to response is usually like, oh, I'm okay. I'm good. And I'm trying to encourage myself and other people to like pause and connect with actually how they're feeling versus the usual, like, oh, it's fine. Everything's great. Because in general, things aren't always that way when we say that, but especially right now.
I hate that these are the circumstances in which we bring you on the show, only because you are an incredible athlete. And from what everyone has told me that knows you and mutual friends and the like have just sung your praises for so long. So this is a great chance to have you on the show. Just unfortunate that it is under these circumstances. I know that we're going to have a lot to cover tonight. So I guess I kind of want to start with, tell us a little bit about what you do, how you work with athletes, and why is it really relevant to this show and our audience and the time that we're in now.
Of course. Well, I really appreciate it. I was super honored when you guys messaged me. I, again, wish it was under different circumstances, but still really excited. I guess 2 years ago, I was talking to the coach, my coach and your coach, David Roach, about how athletes are an underserved population. So I was taking this course through it's like the Alliance of Sports Social Worker, and they were talking about how the rates of suicide for athletes were actually a lot higher than the general population, and the athletes as a whole are overlooked because they're taught a lot of these skills in order to be good athletes. Like, I remember in high school being told that pain is weakness leaving your body.
Oh, yeah.
And so and all these messages that are sent to us through the community, like, oh, you must be so healthy, you're a runner, or like, you don't feel things the same way, or like, you're struggling, but you're still up at 4 a.m. running, or whatever it is. So that the athletes don't get connected to the appropriate mental health services. And if they do, some of the feedback I've heard is people don't understand what running is to them or what sports are to them. And so they often feel like they're in a position of explaining what they do and what they love. And I, with David's support, because he's freaking amazing, created this program called Inner Drive Athlete. And since then, like, I've worked with athletes on a whole host of struggles, including like anxiety before performance, anxiety overall, depression, you name it, and kind of we've addressed it. And some people come and they want to just work on their performance, and generally it's way deeper than just the performance aspect of it. And I look at people as whole people. And so what I mean by that is, you know, we can't just look at you as a runner. We also have to look at you as a father or a friend and a teacher and everything else that you're doing. And all those components go into who you are and who you show up as. And so we're really good at kind of, as athletes, compartmentalizing and being like, all right, we're going to get this done today. But then that stress builds and builds and builds until it becomes too much. So I started to work primarily with athletes remotely. And so I work with David's support. I mean, I work with athletes all over the world, and it's been really amazing.
People have sung your praises, mutual friends and clients and all that sort of thing. And this is, again, a really interesting opportunity to talk to someone like you. So with what's going on right now, normally you would be dealing with athletes and maybe personal anxieties and how that translates to being an athlete or performance or any number of things. Like you said, you look at the full person. Now we're dealing with an outside influence that changes by the day, by the hour. And are your clients able to talk to you about this sort of stuff? Like how are you able to help people in this scenario where there's outside forces sort of changing things for everybody?
And where everything's changing so quickly.
Rapidly. Yeah.
Totally. That's a really good question, because some people do only want to talk about what's going on in the world. And then there's other people who have their own personal challenges and they don't want to talk about it. And neither is right or wrong. I think that society teaches us to look at things in a black or white perspective of this is what you should be thinking and this is how you should be handling it. When in reality, like, there is no right or wrong. There is what is best for you in the moment. And so a lot of the skills that are used for anxiety in everyday life are also going to be the skills that you're going to want to start to use right now when we're dealing with the unknown. Because we don't have a lot of answers, and that's really scary. Because as humans, we are conditioned to want to know exactly what is going to happen next. And I mean, I don't mean to be like dramatic, but we never really know what's going to happen next. Like, we really do create like a false sense of belief system that like we can predict, but really in reality, like, we're kind of at the whim of the way the weather blows, more or less,
right?
Or the way the wind blows, you know? So this is kind of more, of course, extreme. And we really do have to work on being present and acknowledging what we do have control of. One of those things is our thoughts. And so I'd say that, yes, this is very prevalent in most of my conversations right now, but also it's okay to still worry about, like, if you miss your run, or being frustrated that your race gets canceled, or, you know, being annoyed that you can't go to the grocery store because the fresh produce that keeps you healthy is going to impact you in your training. So, like, again, it kind of comes back to that. There's no right or wrong. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling.
It's been, again, like I was kind of mentioned at the top of the show, an interesting, just even the last 4 days, I feel as someone who regularly deals with anxiety, and it's manifested itself in different ways throughout my life. Most recently with running, it pops up during runs or at races and sort of influences a lot, which is awful for me. But I know, and I can pinpoint triggers, and I kind of know when it happens. This has sort of added a whole underlying kind of, I want to call it kind of like this rumble, like a storm underneath the layer. And I would love to try to find some tips for our audience, for myself, for Kim, because I know that we're going to get a lot of questions regarding just general anxiety disorder, which I think is going to be a lot more common as we go into these coming weeks and stuff. Is there a way to sort of deal with this low rumble, this low storm that's kind of brewing?
So I used to work with kids a lot, and they used to tell me that coping skills didn't work for them because it didn't make it better.
Mm.
And so I'm about to share something that you're probably not going to want to hear. But there's nothing that's going to completely take away what you're feeling, because it is the reality of the situation. There's a lot of scary unknowns right now, and you almost need to feel it in order to move through it. With that being said, the coping skills there that I can help you learn are going to help you negotiate it better and not let it overwhelm and immerse you and like drown you.
Mm.
So I like to kind of provide that caveat so people understand, like, it is a life raft in the ocean versus like no one's going to pull you out of the ocean. Like, you still got to get onto the life raft. You still got to get out of the ocean yourself.
Right.
But there are, as hard as they are, there are a lot of tips and tools that I can go over in a second if you want, to help you manage and be prepared versus panicky.
Yeah.
Because panic is not going to change anything that's going to happen. It's going to increase the chaos, and it's going to make your body go. So we have our prefrontal cortex, which is the brain that helps with like reasoning and processing. And then we have our amygdala, or the reptile brain, and that's comes from our flight, fight, or freeze zone. And so when we're feeling really anxious, that's where we go into, and we're not making as much rational choice. And so there are a lot of things that we can do to pause and reconnect to ourselves. So some of the things that I am telling people to do, and I'm doing myself actually, because I trend on the anxious scale, and this is like so out of our control that it's hard to not be overwhelmed.
Sure.
So everyone has like a different opinion about this, but I'm actually not taking my phone on runs with me right now, which I know can be kind of dangerous too. But for me, like, I need that physical separation from the news and checking, like, because it's not changing enough moment to moment,
Right,
that we need to be like glued to our screens. And actually that just increases our stress levels and is not helping us. So I actually putting like little notifications of when I can check the news on my phone. And I'm like sticking to them, because it's not like there is no good to come from like refreshing. Having the specific data of how many people died, like, feeds our anxiety, not helping us feel any better.
that makes sense, and I feel like that's something that I've definitely noticed this weekend. Both of us find those moments where things are starting to elevate and escalate involve where we're sourcing, how much we're sourcing info and news, and it was almost like a weird addiction where you want to not feel out of the loop.
Yeah, and then I would kind of justify it to you of like, I just need to know the numbers right now. Like, I just
Kim
need to
worked
know
in medicine, or
I worked in the medical field prior to this, and so like my science and healthcare brain is triggered a little bit, but that side of me wants to know the numbers. But then you're not just gonna get the numbers; like, you're gonna get,
30 headlines and then maybe a number that's out of date.
And so I find myself kind of backpedaling of like, all right, I need to put it away. I need to put it away. But
that's a great tip.
Yeah. And also, like, I believe that the numbers give us a false sense of security of trying to, like, because our brains are very factual and they want to understand. And so we're like, well, if we can like see the numbers and we can predict and this and that, and it like provides us this comfort that we really need right now. And we don't necessarily have it. So I'm not encouraging people to be ill-informed, but I am encouraging them, like, to, one of my clients said, a Twitter diet. I need you guys to go on the healthiest diet I'm ever going to ask anyone to go on, which is like cut the sources that you're reading from, make it manageable. It is only going to make you more stressed. And we know stress does not help your immunity. So we're boosting your immunity by limiting how much resources or how much sources you're looking at all the time.
That makes perfect sense. Before we start moving into the next topic, because I know Danielle and I emailed back and forth a little bit, there are some talking points that she sort of has come up with that I want to touch on tonight to help athletes deal with this stuff, the ongoing processes that we're going to kind of endure in the coming weeks with training and acknowledging things. But before we get to that, reminder, we are live. We're live with Danielle Snyder. Kim's been in the chat room, and we have a number of questions.
All sorts of questions.
All sorts of questions.
Yeah. You guys can keep asking them as well, because we will have Danielle in our post show for a few minutes also. So anything that doesn't get asked, we will try and run through those as well. So a question from David Roach in the chat room. David says, Danielle, if an athlete feels guilty for caring about their running, is there anything you can recommend they think about?
That's a good question, because it's happening for, I would say, every single athlete that I know right now. And it's not just right now. I think it's in life. We have these moments of people are dying and like we still care about our running. And the first thing that comes to my mind is self-compassion, that it is okay to care about more than one thing. So life is full of dualities, and you can be really, really caring and compassionate and feel really upset about what's going on in the world, and also still care about your running, because we're humans and it's important to us. And that doesn't mean that you're caring not about the pandemic because you're caring about your running. Like, it's not just like you can only care about one thing. Right. We experience a lot of dualities in life, and that's what makes the world beautiful. So I would encourage more self-compassion, and it's okay to care. If you didn't care, I'd be a little concerned. It's what makes you you.
Maybe get one more live question there. I know you got a bunch.
Question from Marin Slow. They asked, my gym is closing tomorrow. Still low temps here in the tundra of North Dakota. How do I keep my spirits up, especially with exercise being my coping with anxiety?
Yes. So this is a really, really challenging one. I know my gym closed today, and I have a routine that I follow. And I was like, mother effer, like, I want to go to the gym. And then, of course, the thing that pops up next is like, you're being selfish, Danielle. There are people dying. And so the reason I'm sharing that with everyone is because it's human. So instead of getting frustrated that I had that initial thought of like being sad, I first want to acknowledge, like, it's okay to be frustrated, especially when it's a coping skill. There are so many awesome things that are coming out right now. And I share this because, like, a lot of people are talking about how horrible the community is. And I'm actually seeing it on another level. I'm seeing these free yoga programs pop up. I'm seeing people post free workouts. I did this like stupid, it's not stupid, but this at-home gym workout where I look like a fool with body weights, and I'll share it with anyone. I know a lot of my friends are doing that. And depending on how cold the temperatures are and whether or not you can be safe, I actually would encourage you to bundle up and get outside for a few minutes. I think we're not used to being stuck in our homes. And if it's safe and you're not around other people, go outside. I ran yesterday in like 15 degrees, and I paused and I just looked and like breathed in because it made me feel alive, and I needed that in the moment. So kind of knowing this is temporary, and then also doing what you can. If you I had an athlete run up and down their stairs because they're in Spain right now, and there's different rules and regulations. And so she's going up and down her stairs. Like, I guess it's also another time to get a little creative as well.
Last week, the video that I posted last week mentions at the end, people are getting races canceled left and right or postponed. We had to do that with Tiger Claw, which is heartbreaking. We had to tell all of our runners that we don't know when the race is going to happen. We're still communicating with them, so obviously we'll figure out some more details to send them. But it's one of those things where all these runners now have these A races, and things they've been planning on sort of disappearing. And training is going to be influenced by new mandates that are being put in place, and that could change daily and weekly and stuff like
We're
that.
even seeing some parks being shut down as well.
Yeah, state parks, DNR land, stuff like that. So the gating creative was something I thought of last week. I was like, you know what, our dog is snoring. Oh my God, that was such a weird noise. We've been getting creative with doing our virtual run that we do every year, our global run. And it's kind of one of those things like, oh, this is a chance for everyone to sort of figure out a way to challenge themselves in new and unique ways. And it is going to be really interesting to see how people come up with ways to take fitness indoors for themselves. Maybe they're never doing fitness indoors, but this is one of those chances to like figure it out. Like, let's get creative with it. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. And also connecting to your why. A lot of times I encourage athletes to do this when a race goes wrong for them or doesn't pan out the way they want to, is like to remember what got them connected to running in the first place. Because it sucks when your A race gets canceled, and it makes sense that you're feeling disappointed about it. And it's also, why do you love this sport? Like, what makes it so important to you? And like reconnect to that. Because for most of us, races will be there. Like, this will pass and things will be really, really hard and look different. And then we'll maintain normal life at some point, I'm assuming. And I think that it's important to remember, like, nothing lasts forever, even if things look different at the end. We know as a world, things are always changing.
This is definitely one of those memorable moments in history. We've talked about this weekend of just things. We don't know what our new normal will be. We don't know how different it will look. And I remember 9/11. A lot of us lived through that, and it was certainly something that influenced. It's still
like there was life before and there was life after.
And it's interesting to be now 20 years removed from that, and it's the new version of that, right? That our minds now don't know what's going to happen. Like we have a dog.
Somebody in the chat room just said, ask Danielle to show us her dog.
We have a dog. That makes everything better.
This is Petra.
Hi, Petra.
That was perfect timing.
I love it. Dogs win.
Yes. Actually, that's one of the I was thinking about this last night after we decided to do the show. And I was thinking one thing that I think is really helpful is breathing exercises. And if you have a beloved animal, matching your breath to their breathing and heart rate can be really, really helpful in getting yourself back into the present moment and calming down. Because most animals, they have a pretty normal rate of breathing. And so I actually you can't really see her right now, but I'll put my hand on her chest and just kind of slow myself to try to match my breath to her heart rate. And if you are in a moment of panic, which happens sometimes when things are really quiet, that is a really good time to work with the things in your life that want to support you.
Yeah.
So that is actually one of those tips that I like to share with people as well.
She couldn't have arrived at a better time right there. That was perfect.
She knew.
She's like, I need to make my appearance. Here I come. My makeup is done. I'm ready. So you emailed me 5 good important topics that maybe we could talk about, and I think this is great. So I'll just go down the list. And I'll sort of have you explain kind of what you mean by it, and maybe something that can help, obviously, our community. Number 1 was, there is no right or wrong, just best for you. Can you explain that one?
Yeah. So I'm getting a lot of questions about what, and I'm feeling this too, of what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And so there are, of course, the CDC recommendations, which as a social responsibility, I encourage people to follow. But in terms of if they go to their grocery store or if their gym is open and they go, are they a horrible person or things like that? And I think you have to look at your own moral compass and values and see what or like make sure what you're doing is okay with you, because there isn't a right or wrong. Like truly, we don't know um, what is best in this moment other than the information that we're being provided. And so if it feels okay, then I'm going to encourage people to listen to their gut.
Love it.
Yeah. So there's the best decision. A lot of people are being forced to go to work still and they're feeling really guilty about it. And it's like, well, we don't always get those decisions. Like, of course, you can always make the decision not to go to work, but then there are consequences. So everyone has to kind of do that moral inventory of what they feel right with.
Number 2, you mentioned acknowledging how you are feeling is important and you are not alone in any of this. And I think this is a super crucial one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like immediately identified with this one. So do you mind explaining that one?
Yeah. So it's really fascinating. I share a lot of stories. I know you said that was okay beforehand, but
it's great.
We love it.
I'm going to keep doing it. So the problem or not the problem, but the challenges that humans also have is that they don't often process their emotions after a trauma or during a trauma. And what happens is that our body actually holds that trauma in. In animals, they don't have a prefrontal cortex, I don't think. But they have an ability to respond to trauma in the moment, which helps them kind of like process it and let go of it. So there's a study on antelopes, and after they're chased, if they remain alive, what they do is they huddle together and they shake. And their shaking is the way that they disrobe kind of the trauma. And it's really fascinating because they know they need to do that in order to take care of themselves. So as humans, one of the ways we shake is by talking about things and processing things. And as a whole society, especially athletes, we're not kind of given that outlet of it's okay to share. It's becoming more acceptable, but I would say there's still kind of like, ooh, that person struggles with it. Like it's a shocker when someone mentions that they're human. To have feelings is to be a human. To talk about those feelings is to acknowledge that you're a human. And in this time, more than ever, we need to be able to talk about things. With that being said, it's also okay to put up boundaries if someone is talking in a way that is causing you more stress or chaos. So there's helpful processing and then there's harmful processing. There are certain people who are, I want to think about how to say this, alarmists, and everything they're talking about is going to just cause you to feel more stress. And you have to put yourself first in this moment. And you actually have to say like, okay, like we can talk about other things right now. Yeah. And then there are other people who like you're going to talk to and share all those emotions with. And that's okay. Because someone is feeling how you're feeling. Like you are not alone in this. This is universal at this point.
That by far is one of the most helpful for me. It's really easy to sort of recognize maybe internally, okay, I'm feeling a certain way and sort of box it up and hold on to it. And like, I'll deal with this later. I need to deal with what's going on right now. Like it's easy to box that stuff up, but for me, it's always been really difficult to sort of recognize that those things that I felt or what I was going through is in fact part of what makes me human as opposed to fragile. And learning that the fragility is part of being human has been a really, really difficult battle. But I think that was the one I definitely identified with the most. By the way, everyone watching live, Kim is still pulling all of your questions for Danielle aside. We're going to try to get to as many as possible at the end of the show and in our after show.
Yes.
We have a couple more points here that Danielle wants to talk about. Social distancing. So I love this one too. Social distancing doesn't mean limiting contact and connection.
Yes. So I was thinking about it in terms of how we are social humans, and we really thrive. A lot of us really thrive from connection, and how we aren't really able to do that at this time safely. And I think and we're used to it day to day. So I think it's really helpful to still be connecting. Like I had FaceTime dinner with one of my girlfriends where we both pulled up our phones and we were like on FaceTime because, she lives with someone who is more immunocompromised. And so she didn't want to come out. And so we sat and we talked on FaceTime. And so, yeah, it's not ideal. You don't get to feel the other person's energy, but right now it's working. And so using the community that you have for good right now is so important, to continuing to reach out and not isolate, because you are unfortunately more isolated right now because a lot of us are working from home. I think everyone has like opinions about how many people they should go running with, but
Right.
if you're keeping this social distance at this point, running with one or two people, I think that's okay. Again, that comes back to there's no right or wrong. There's just best for you. But use your phones. Like, we have amazing technology. We're Skyping. We don't even live in the same area.
Mhm.
I know my Facebook group that I have, we're connecting with each other all day, every day, talking about things, doing live videos. There are resources out there, and it's really important to continue to stay connected and let people know what you need right now.
This show, part of the reason we wanted to make sure that we did a live show on Monday, despite the fact that, of course, like my brain and Kim's brain was kind of saying, we need to take a break. Like, we need to sort of focus on ourselves and the family and all that. A part of doing Ginger Runner Live is exactly that. It's the recognition of the fact we've got hundreds of people watching. We've got Danielle coming to us from Oregon, bringing people together in a place, even if none of us are in the same place, except for Kim and myself. It's kind of a neat thing that we have at our disposal with technology. And I want to make sure that, as I mentioned, Kim and I don't plan on stopping creating stuff and putting stuff out there because we know people want to watch it. But I also believe in these live shows, and we plan on doing a lot more. Live music. I want to create live music and art and stuff like that. So these live shows are great opportunities to communicate with people,
to connect.
Yeah. And like you said, Danielle, like, this has been huge. This has been such a special use of technology for 6 years now for us, and to actually see it be a moment that it can be used for a greater good is like just one of the coolest things ever, that technology like this exists. We're so happy that it exists, so we can connect to people in Oregon and across the world.
One more thing I'm just thinking about in terms of the transition from like our normal everyday life outside to now is the craving I have for routine. And so if you are transitioning to home work and used to seeing people, I'm actually encouraging people to like create a schedule to stick to. And so they're waking up so our body craves routine as a form of normalcy. So waking up at the same time, going for a run at the same time, if you're used to eating breakfast at the same time and then working those hours, keeping that the same, and then like Skyping with your friend instead of going out to dinner, also you're getting the same interactions and your body will kind of fall into place. I think about it a lot in terms of a 100-miler race. So when you first start, you're like jittery. And for me, I like often have mantras in my head of like, you just got to settle, you got to settle. And for the first 20 miles, it's like settling. And right now we have to get our bodies to settle into this new normal crisis period. And so almost finding that momentum in that routine is going to be really important for people.
I love that. 2 more points. Work on managing what you can. Some thoughts, actions, limiting watching news, etc. I think this is super important too.
Yeah. So what you tell yourself can become your reality. Our brains are really, really powerful. I mean, I don't think our brains can override a virus, but our brains can definitely cause an increase in stress, inability to sleep. And so when you are struggling emotionally, telling yourself that there are things in your control can be really helpful. So telling yourself, like, in this moment, you are safe. Because in this moment, right now, all of us are safe. We may not know what happens in the next 20 minutes, but right now we're safe. And so knowing that we can calm ourselves and do things with our thoughts and our actions is really powerful. Something that I'll guide people with a lot of times, it's grounding exercises that can also help you feel more present and safe in the moment. So that's in your control. Having a safety plan is in your control. Feeling prepared, having enough food but not too much food. Balance.
That dovetails perfectly with the last point of perfect time to practice grounding exercises, as you mentioned, meditation. And you mentioned a grounding exercise. If you have something like that you can divulge, we'd love to learn a good grounding exercise. I'm sure there's some that we can have our viewers take on.
I'm giving away all my tips. No one's going to need to call me anymore.
Well, then if they want that, how about that? That can always
No,
be something.
I'm fine. There are so many grounding exercises out there. So one thing that I have people do anywhere is, so the way we ground in the most effective ways is using our 5 senses. So I have people tell me like 5 things they see that are the color blue and say it out loud. Not just me, but also at home. And then 4 different things that they can touch. So this is a good time to touch your furry friends, your shirt, your hair, whatever. And then 3 different things that they can hear, 2 different things that they can smell, and 1 different thing that they can taste. And so it brings you back to the present moment. It gets you from your flight, fight, or freeze response, that reptile brain, and it goes more into your thoughtful, reasonable brain and helps you just pause in the moment. Write it down, use it. I have people do it on their runs right now. It's really, really calming.
I personal experience had a run last summer that went wrong very early on and had a bit of a panic moment. And I don't know where I heard it or where I got it from it, but I've held on to it for years. And I knew I needed to touch something, like something physical. So I picked up a stick on the ground, and I still have the stick on my desk because it got me through a really weird dark place that came out of nowhere. But it was just the sensation of touching something and the detail of that object and learning it in my hands as I was running was one of those things that I had the best last half of a run ever. But that first half was one of the most terrifying ones I've ever had. And I held onto that stick. And so people have asked, why do you have a stick on your desk? I'm pointing at my desk. And I don't really share why I have the stick, but it's certainly something that I didn't realize at the time it was a grounding exercise. And it was just kind of one of those things that helped. These are amazing, amazing talking points, Danielle. And I'm so thankful that we were able to talk a little bit about this on the show. Let's get to some live questions, though, because I know our live viewers are just waiting to ask some questions of you.
Yeah, let's see. Love It in the chat room says, what role does poor diet or other bad habits play into anxiety?
That's a really good question. So I think that when we are in a moment of crisis or chaos, we go back to what we usually do to self-soothe. And a lot of times what we have learned how to self-soothe with aren't always the healthiest coping skills. And I'm not encouraging bad behaviors, but I also don't want you to punish yourself if right now you are stepping back a little bit, because sometimes stepping backwards can be your spring forward. So first, acknowledge that it happens to all of us, and it's a comfort and it's a safety mechanism. It's not because you need to fall back into old patterns to be safe. And then remind yourself that tomorrow is a new day and you get to restart and you get to practice new healthy coping mechanisms. Because yes, having a well-rounded diet is going to help your anxiety. Not, engaging in activities that are addictive, like drinking or smoking or overeating or over-exercising. Any of those things are not going to be helpful long-term. And so you have to kind of find that balance of it is okay to step backwards for a second and then let's move forward. Did that answer the question, kind of?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get to a couple more.
This question comes from Ingen. This question was asked in all caps. Ingen says, how do I think about something that isn't coronavirus?
Oh, that's a good question. It's really hard right now. And by limiting your media and so this is something I do with people where I give them a time period in which they're allowed to actually think about it, and then they have to put it away in a box in their brain. So it is only effective to think about these things for so long, and you can put an alarm on your phone, like 20 minutes twice a day. You can think about the corona virus as much as you want to, and then you have to distract yourself through movement, walking, talking to other people, and also asking for support. Like if you are finding yourself, this is the only thing that you can think about, it's really a good time to reach out and talk to someone, a therapist who can support you through it.
One more question.
And it's also super normal.
Sorry. Yeah.
Like everyone is doing that.
Go ahead.
Not to minimize it.
A2B2 in that chat room says, after being out for a year with an injury, anytime I start to feel a similar niggle, my anxiety starts to kick up. Any recommendations on how to cope with and push past these feelings?
Oh, that's such a great question as well, especially with like muscle memory. So our body holds emotional trauma as well. And so it's really common when you're recovering from an injury, especially something that was really long, to be worried it's going to happen again. And that takes some work of learning how to trust your body again and evaluate what is harm versus hurt. And so harm is like long-term damage versus hurt is just like growing pains. And I want to be able to answer this question succinctly. And I also feel like it's one of those things that would be really important to work with someone on, because I don't feel like there's just like a one size fits all with that question. The best that you can do is acknowledge how you're feeling in the moment, pause, assess, and then keep moving if it's not injured.
I know that that's something that a lot of our viewers have a problem with at the same time, is like we've talked about a little bit with injury, like the psychology behind injury, and especially like coming back and not knowing when the right time is to come back, and sort of the connection to the muscle or the injury, and just the constant awareness of it. And it takes so much time to get over that. An ankle roll is like the perfect example in my case, where I remember rolling my ankle multiple times, but it always takes so much longer to get back to confidence running downhill, and because you're fearing it and you feel tweak, you're like, oh, that's it again. But it's that psychology of it. That's I can't imagine how beneficial it is to talk to someone like you when that sort of thing is going on, just to sort of like ground you again, just to be like, here's how to cope. We are going to move into our after show here in a second, but again, we had the fortune of talking with someone tonight, Danielle Snyder, who provided us with a little bit more insight, some tools to help kind of get us through all of this. But you also work on an individual basis. And I want to, before I let you plug it, I just want to emphasize that if you have it within your means, supporting small businesses is going to be crucial in the coming weeks and months. We haven't seen the full economic impact that this will have on small businesses, especially freelancers, contractors, people who may not get the assistance that they need, restaurant workers, all that stuff. Danielle is a small business. We're a small business. So first, we just want to thank everyone again for tuning in tonight and watching this show and just allowing us to talk about this stuff. And hopefully you pulled something from it. But also, Danielle, where can they find you and where can they reach out to you? Because you do offer services on a one-on-one basis and you do great things for many people. So where can they find you?
So you can email me, Danielle R. Snyder at gmail.com. I should probably spell that, huh?
I got your name on the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
Just add an R.
Great.
Danielle R. Snyder. I forgot the R earlier and I was emailing. I'm sorry.
Someone else.
Yeah, to whoever, the other Danielle Snyder out there, I'm sorry about all the emails.
She gets lots of my emails. So
I'm sure she does.
And I, regardless of it, whether it's with me or with someone else, I really, really want to encourage people to reach out right now, because we're kind of like pressure cookers, and the more we increase the pressure and we don't let off the steam, the more it's going to build. And so I just, if you have learned one thing through this entire show, it's just that you're not alone, and please seek support.
Go ahead.
And you do remote
remote, right?
consultations. And
I do remote, and I've always done sliding scale, and even more so now, because I think we all need to rally together to be successful through this. And one of those ways is by being a good community member. So
I guess one thing I want, we do have a quickie question quiz with our guest tonight, because this is her first time on the show, and we got to end on a good note, on a nice, happy, positive note. But I was also really curious just about this. We can go to you. We can go to people like you who can provide us with a bit of insight, a bit of perspective. Do you have people that you go to? Do you have your system in place as well? Is that something that sort of happens?
Yeah. I have a therapist that I talk to. I was on the phone with her today, and reminding me that, what I'm feeling is okay, and that there's no wrong feelings, kind of the same thing. She is also like my supervisor, clinical supervisor, I guess you'd call her. But she works also to help me with my emotional needs, because listen, we all have emotions. It's a part about being human. Therapist needs therapists. If you are a therapist or a doctor, I mean, I think that's like another thing that's really important right now is like I'm working with a lot of people on the front lines, and they need support too. And therapists are on the front lines of dealing with what other people are seeing as well. And so everyone should have someone.
I think that's the best message to sort of end our show on before we move into the after show is everyone needs someone. And we're so thankful for your time tonight, Danielle. We really, really appreciate it. We do have a segment on the show that we like to do with first-time guests. It's very easy. There's no pressure, no stress. It's called our Quickie Question Quiz. It's a rapid-fire series of very simple questions. When you are ready for these questions, just let us know with a thumbs up, and we'll get right into it.
Bring it.
What was your very first race?
Shoot. I don't know. Some marathon. I don't remember.
I love that it's some marathon. I love it.
Oh, sorry. That was. I was like, I don't know. It was a marathon when I was 18.
Perfect. Favorite place to run currently?
I'm really love the Three Sisters Wilderness right now.
Gorgeous out there. Is there still snow up? There's definitely still snow up high.
Yeah, we just got dumped on actually yesterday.
Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
I am a fly by the seat of my pants type of person. I don't really have it. Like I just
That's
do
great.
whatever.
We've had multiple people answer with that question, and that's one I identify with most. Favorite running movie?
Oh, I am really bad at this. I don't really watch a lot of movies.
Also a good answer. We've gotten that one before too. Guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh, I can tell you about my guilty pleasure of books.
There we go. Perfect.
Oh, wait. Oh, no. Last winter was really, really bad, and I watched Gossip Girl when I was running on the treadmill a lot. It was horrible.
Classic.
Lorelai, just craziness.
That's wrong.
Lorelai's in the show.
That's Gilmore Girls.
What'd she say?
Gossip Girl?
Gossip Girls or Gilmore Girls?
Gossip. Even trashier.
I just showed my cards. I showed all my cards. I failed. What is your favorite pre-race or pre-FKT meal? What is the big food choice?
Oh, I like pancakes with peanut butter.
Really good choice.
Mostly during adventures and races, if possible.
What about post-race?
Ice cream.
Good choice. And finally, what are your current running kicks? What are the shoes that you are doing all your adventures in?
Oh, so I am a self-supported therapist. I wear like the cheapest Brooks Cascadias.
Fantastic. That's
Just wear
always
them.
the best answer is whichever ones work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, used them
Fantastic.
for like 13 years.
Awesome. You passed the test. That was all that was
Great.
it. You got them all correct. 100%. We're just remind everyone again where they can find you on social and website and stuff like that, or email Danielle.
Yeah. Oh, I have a Facebook account. You can find me, Danielle Snyder. And then I have an Instagram account, Danielle Smells, Dielle Smells.
We also had a request about the books. I still want to hear about the books. We
I
never
heard
did.
a little bit about the books on Facebook.
What are the guilty pleasure
Oh.
books?
I read like these romantic, trashy novels. They're horrible. And now I have this like belief system that I'm going to find like a trail runner with a dirty van and it's going to be like this romantic novel. So I might write one during this all my free time now.
Do it. That'd be. I can't tell you how many people would probably buy it.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's a niche market. You gotta nail it. It'd be perfect. Our guest tonight, Danielle Snyder, is an incredible human being who spent some wonderful time with us tonight, sort of educating us and informing us, and we can't thank her enough. We are going to move into our after show. If you would like to join our after show, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, it's not a lot. It does support everything we do here. And I hate to be the salesman right here and to pitch it, but we're a little scared, and I know that's because of the times that we're in.
We know we're not alone in that.
We're not alone in that,
also.
and we know that many of you watching are probably in that same boat. So if it's within your means, we'd love to have you join the Patreon crew. There are some cool perks. We're going to be upping as much as we can on the back end with perks and stuff in the coming weeks and months, trying to do more live streams and community-based stuff. We're going to do everything we can to sort of bring everyone together, and that goes for this channel as well. So even if you can't, don't worry about it. This channel is going to be a place that you can come and sit and maybe just disconnect for a little bit. We wanted to make sure that we did this show tonight because it's important. It's an important time, and we've just had the last 4 days just sort of shift a lot on us with Tiger Claw being postponed and everything like that. So we want to continue to post reviews and fun videos and lighthearted entertainment, and we will continue to do that. So we thank you all so much for your time tonight and joining us and our guest, Danielle Snyder. We are going to move into our after show, but before we do have a new segment that we like to do at the end of every episode, call our GR Crew Member of the Week. It's where we get to recognize a member of the community for going above and beyond and doing something great, whether it's for themselves or for others. And Kim, who is our GR Crew Member of the Week?
This week's GR Crew Member of the Week is Brendan Quarrel. If you are part of the GR crew and on the Facebook page, you've already seen this, but I want to shout out Brendan today because he posted in the GR crew Facebook page. He says, with all the races around the world being canceled, 3 this weekend for me and counting, I thought, let's put on our own race, a global run, because at this stage, we are still allowed to go for a run. He said, it is 24,901 miles around the globe. The idea is you go for a run anywhere, inside or out, shout out where you ran, add a picture, and add it to the total. Let's see how long it takes us to run around the world.
So if you go to the GR Crew Facebook group, if you're a Patreon member, you'll know how to get there. And there's a post that Brendan has put there. It's a fantastic, fun way that we can all sort of communicate, get our runs in, and we're going to try to run around the world, 24,000 plus miles.
There's a running tally. People are adding pictures and upping their totals. It's very cool. Thank you, Brendan, for thinking about that. And I also want to just quickly say there is also another thread in the GR Crew Facebook page of people who are wanting to get together for Google Hangouts and chat face-to-face and connect with each other in that way. So if you're interested in that, there is also a thread in there.
Really great way to put names to faces. It's a really cool thing that's happening in the community. So again, another reason to join us at patreon.com/thegingerrunner. A bit of an update on GR. We will hopefully get the Ginger Runner Global Run going as soon as possible. Obviously, this is the time when we need something like that. So we're going to do everything we can to support local businesses and see what we can get happen. We're going to meet on that in the coming weeks and stuff. So please stand by. I know a lot of people have been messaging me about like, you got to do it. I'm like, listen, We're going to do everything we can because you were right. We need to do it. I think the world needs to come together in any way we can. And we have the means through technology. It's a pretty cool, unique thing. We're going to move into the after show with our wonderful guest, Danielle. We won't keep her for very long, but we do have some residual questions. And if you do as well, we'd love to see you there. So that's it for tonight's episode, everybody. We'll see you next week for episode 300. It will be a viewer mail episode. We want to celebrate the community as much as possible. And over the next week, if you'd like to email us your stories of successes and trials and tribulations and stuff like that, maybe it's an experience you would like to share from a race that you ran earlier in this year or last year. We'd love to hear those stories. So you can email those to thegingerrunner@gmail.com with the subject viewer mail, and we'll try to get through as many as possible on next week's episode for the 300th episode. In the meantime, get out there, train as hard as you feel like you can, virtual race however you can, and party the hardest.
And also wash your hands.
And wash your hands. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.